Hello, Martin. How are you?
Great.
Well, Martin, I thank you for coming on here with me tonight. I'd like to talk to you about your public speaking.
Looking forward to that.
So can you give me some information about your first few keynotes that you've done?
One of the keynotes that was interesting to me was one that I didn't expect. A number of years ago, I had done some coaching and training for Decorating Den, I believe was the name of the business. It was a franchise. It was mostly women run, and I'd come out and spoke, done some coaching and speaking with them, and they said, would you come to one of our events to speak? And I said, sure, and I gave them a fair price, and it wasn't far. Let's say it was like Greensboro, and I'm in Raleigh. Mm-hmm. So I went to the event. My wife came along with me, and they picked up the hotel and stuff, and we walked in the room, and I asked them, where's the breakout room that I'm being in? Because the room I went into was this massive banquet with over room for 300 people. And I knew that wasn't the room I was to speak in. Huh? And the woman said, you'll be speaking right down there. She sort of looked surprised. And I realized that not only was I the main event, I had not prepared to be the main event. I had kind of an informal talk for a few people. And right after she said that, I look up and there are these massive screens on the wall and my picture's there and the description of enhancing self-confidence, the talk was the main talk. So that was very exciting, and it really was one of the many breakthrough moments when I realized that I could just kind of walk into the place, tune into the people there, and speak. I did not have a talk designed for more of a discussion to go with a small room. I listened to who was there. I spoke, and they said it was fantastic and exactly what they wanted.
Did you feel it was fantastic and what they wanted?
The piece of it is in the moment when you don't know, I'm filled with both fear and exhilaration. And I tell people that's a good feeling. I don't know, because when I'm really in the zone speaking, and I'm out there with them, it's very hard for me to be over here and assess if it's good or not, because it's more like 110% commitment to the audience in front of me. And then I can't even tell you what I said half the time. I mean, I have bullet points, but the nuances, the stories that come to me, the sense, oh, this is something that's relevant to this group right now. All of that is a very dynamic style that I have.
Well, Martin, I've been fortunate enough to take several of your classes, but could you tell our audience today, what is your style of speaking?
It's interesting you said that, because I really became most clear of it when I was going to a Florida event. There was a big conference for people who write proposals internationally. And I showed up at the event. This was one of the more larger events. There's over 500 plus people, maybe more, in a banquet. They flew us down there. I was one of the speakers, and I had always been told about perfectly orchestrating everything that goes on and having every timing signature done. And that never really was my best way of doing things. And the person before me had all that. I mean, it was intimidating. They had cue cards. You could see they were practicing before. Every single second was timed out. And I was frankly a little intimidated. This was in the earlier stages. And then I thought, well, I had spoken to the people the night before. I always get to know the audience. And I got on stage. I had a good slide deck. And I did what I do best, which is speak to the listening of the people in front of me of what I feel they need now, combined with the content I've brought to them. And I was shocked because the other person looked the most polished. You know what I mean? Where every second you can see is timed out. And I had just countless people come up that was inspiring, that moved them. That's what they needed. And they I don't want to mention it, but they were far from complimentary of the other talk. They use words like contrived, over-polished, and other things. So I would say my style is very much a method of taking the content I have and weaving it with the knowledge I have the people before, and then being able to adapt to the feel of the room. So it's kind of a logic and intuition in the experience. I know this sounds funny, but it reminds me of a Ravi Shankar concert. I don't know if you know who he is.
Well, I'm definitely old enough to know who he is.
But Ravi Shankar said every concert is slightly different because I play off the audience. And that's been my style of interacting, because I'll remember a conversation I had the night before with someone there, and it'll fit in to the event. So it really is a visceral experience of me and them in a back and forth. And the way my goal is, and my commitment is, that I speak to every single person in the room of what they uniquely need. Now, obviously, I don't reach that goal, but that's the commitment I come from when I'm speaking and training.
All right. Well, I know the answer to some of these questions, so I'm going to go ahead and ask the obvious one. How are you adapting to this new world that we're living in?
Absolutely, because when the coronavirus hit, the world changed overnight, and we went from, 75% or more of my business was in front of groups of people, either small groups or large groups or keynotes or professional associations, and that just vaporized immediately because everyone was like a stunned deer. What are we going to do next? I mean, they were all regrouping. Nobody had a solution. There was no playbook for this new world. Luckily, what you're seeing here is I had a podcast room. I had built a number of years before because I got into podcasting. That's a whole nother conversation. I was one of the early podcasters. I loved it. And I happened to create a room. There was supposed to be an extra room in the house we put on for my parents to come, and made it into a studio. So luckily I had the room. Also, I had been actively involved as a radio engineer in college. I had always enjoyed being on stage. I did stand-up comedy training, many things. And the key is how do I build that sense of connection in front of people online? And Alan, it took a little while, because especially in a webinar where all you get is just messages from the people. So what my style now is, I still learn about the group, what the audience is, find out the sense, usually talk to key people. I like to people in authority, and then people that are just a working group, and get a pulse of who they are, because the way my style involves paying attention to what's there. So it did take a little bit to get up to speed. Now I've done a very large number of them, and I'm in it. I often will team up with someone who helps moderate along with it, and many corporations, that's what they want. So they're fielding questions and answers. And now it's becoming part of life. Not that I don't love being in front of a group of people. I mean, I really I feed off of it. But you've got to find new ways to be connected in this world. And of course, I enjoy both. I do webinars and meetings. Meetings are some of my favorite, where I can see and hear them. But in webinars, we still have someone giving feedback.
Can you tell us a little bit about some of the classes you are teaching online right now?
Absolutely. So I've literally been able to retool every one of my classes to some degree online. Often people want them shorter. Some of my training courses were 3 or 4 hours, and they moved down to an hour and a half. So I picked the essence of them and move out. So for professional organizations, I can give several of those. I just did one recently, and it was teamed up with my associate, Gene, and it was multicultural, multi-generational, gender difference communications. It was really something we developed a year ago, and thought, look, the world has become flat. We have more diversity than ever before. I wanted to look at what this is. And of course, growing up in DC, I was more accustomed to being around diversity than most people naturally are. So I knew there was something that needed, and I wanted my spin, my unique handling on it. Other things involve training, like LinkedIn training, professional training, reputation online. Of course, I do a whole series for professionals, but I also do some for small business. The small business might be building their brand online. The professionals is the idea of how do they network on the ground and on the web and keep it all congruent and together. And then I have some unique ones, how to One is about humor, appropriate humor in the workplace. With all the stress, we're terrified of being misunderstood. And I have instant humor, just add life. And it talks about laughing with versus laughing at, having sensitivity to your environment, but still having a sense of humor and what it means. And all of those now are available both online and, of course, as we open up in person too. But that's to give a little breadth of it. And if I took the essence of this, Alan, it's really the on the ground and on the world that we live in. See, we live in an augmented world right now. We either like it or don't like it, but it's there already. And if we can understand how to create a congruency that works with a busy life, then we can be more effective. And this is a core essence of this in many of my courses.
I was fortunate enough to meet you about 3 years ago, where I took a 12-week social media marketing class. And at that point in time, I was taking it to promote my photography business. And that was over at NC State. Are you still conducting classes over at NC State?
Yes, we've moved. That's an interesting one. We've moved from a full classroom to a hybrid in the beginning, because our 12-week program started right in the middle of isolation beginning with the coronavirus. So we had to go online. We finished the course online. In fact, the first class don't get their certificates till the building opens up. So that occurred. And now we've had the first all online class, and it's very exciting because now we have someone from Boston, we have someone from beyond Hickory in North Carolina, I'm in Raleigh. That wouldn't have been possible otherwise. So our plan now at State is to make the social media management and marketing certificate program a hybrid when we move back to the classroom. So then we will have a webinar situation as well. And I want to tell you, Alan, I was one of the first people to start doing this with associations and groups. See, most of them would have these meetings and everyone shows up, and then people needed to get their continuing education credits. Well, they couldn't get them unless they showed up at the meeting. So I worked with one group, an IMA group, many years ago, and there's a video on that as well, where we created a hybrid method of being able to simulcast over WebEx the course and then create test questions that were affordable but would be accepted for credentials. This was before anyone else in the area was doing it, because since I have the technology knowledge as well as the experience of speaking, I was able to work with that team and get it going. And we literally doubled the profit of an association by doing it. Now this is more regular, but no one had really started that before. And they had gotten prices of up to thousands of dollars to have a professional come in and do it. And we did it for a few hundred with gear that I was able to bring to the group.
As I learned in your class, brevity in social media is probably a good thing. So I'm going to thank you for joining me here tonight, and tell everybody they can watch this video, the replay of this video on the website, the Christianson Agency. I'm Alan Christianson with the Christianson Agency. And Martin, thank you very much again. I enjoyed it.
Thanks. This was excellent. Appreciate the time.